My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Mike Fanning is a doctor of chiropractic out of Southern California with a specialty in sports medicine. He is an Air Force veteran, a marathon runner, a cyclist, and has a ton of amazing life experiences that have put him on the path he's on today. Please welcome a good friend of mine, Dr. Mike Fanning. Michael, how we doing, pal?
I'm doing all right. Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
Very good, very good. Excited for today's episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you asking me.
Absolutely, man. So, Mike, where are you from?
Originally, I am from the great state of Rhode Island, just a suburb of Providence called Smithfield.
Smithfield, all right. The ocean state over there, huh?
The ocean state.
There we go. So you grew up in Rhode Island. You went to high school out there?
Yes, sir. I just went to public school, Smithfield High School.
Nice.
Graduated in 2005.
You play any sports in high school?
I played a lot of sports growing up. However, not to get too off topic at the beginning, but my behavior problems kept me off of a lot of school sports.
Yeah?
Yes.
Were you a rowdy kid in class or what?
Yeah, I just couldn't sit still.
Noticed that a little bit in chiropractic school too. So what did you do after high school?
Well, immediately after high school, I got shipped out from Boston to San Antonio to Lackland Air Force Base, and I joined the Air Force. Then they shipped me out in August. So I had like 8 weeks. I made clam cakes all summer and then put on a plane.
So what made you want to join the Air Force?
Well, basically growing up, my father would always tell me that I needed some more discipline and I needed to join the Marines. So there was one point I remember particularly, not very proud of it. I was like an 18-year-old. I had just turned 18. I woke up hugging a toilet at the age of 18, drunk. And I had been doing a lot of substance abuse and I decided I needed to get my act together. So the next morning, I went with this girl who I was friendly with, and she was joining the Air Force, and she said, just come talk to my recruiter. She had been telling me that for a couple of weeks, so I just told her I'm going to go with her that morning, and I went to the recruiter that morning. He told me to get my act together and come back a week later because I was hungover. And
so you went to the recruiter hungover? He was probably like, who the hell is this kid?
Yes, pretty much.
So did you sign up that day?
I couldn't just because I was underage and I was drinking and the recruiter was pretty pissed off at me. But I went back a week later. I failed a drug test, so they didn't want to ship me up. So I waited a month and then I signed up. So it was kind of a little bit of a longer process than, yeah.
Okay, so then they shipped you off to San Antonio, and what was that like?
Air Force basic training is kind of easy, honestly, compared to my secondary training that I went through. The only thing hard about it for me was folding clothes. I found out a couple good things that I was put in like a leadership position, that I got out of my comfort zone. I found out I was a really good runner. So that was kind of like the beginning of my running.
How did you find that out?
Well, on the one day, we had to do a PT test, and I finished the fastest out of my platoon, which was about 90 people. And then they asked me to represent the squadron in the Lackland Air Force Base Games, which is like the week before you graduate, all of the squadrons, there's probably 6,000 people who are there, and they throw like different events depending on like a push-up competition. Right. So I got put into the 5K, and I actually finished in 5th overall, and I had never run a 5K in my life.
Did you even like run for fun ever?
No. I played soccer, played football, hockey, not as much as you, but I played tons of sports growing up, but I never ran over a mile and a half.
Dude, that is impressive. That's insane.
But I have them in my genes. Both my parents were runners in college.
Okay. So you did the basic training and everything, and what was next for you?
I went into the Air Force with no job at all. So it was either that they were going to make me a weatherman, but I would
going to make you a weatherman.
Yes, but I was going to have to wait until basically like 8 months after I graduated, and I just was like, I don't want to get in trouble. I feel like if I stuck around my town, I'd probably get into a little bit of trouble. So this group of guys came to me. They were pretty badass. They were from the TACP, which stands for Tactical Air Control Party. And so they told me a little about the job, and it sounded good because it wasn't your typical Air Force job. I'd be with the Army. I'd be dealing with close air support, which is calling in artillery fire, airstrikes from fixed wing aircraft or from helicopters, or actually drones nowadays. So I was like, man, that's pretty cool. So they ran me through a battery of tests, and I did fine at everything. The only thing, this will become important later, was I didn't do very well on the sit-ups. I just barely passed for them. So, but they were like, you'll be fine. We'll ship you off. We're going to send you to Florida when you graduate, and you're going to go through your 6 months or 7 months of training down there. And it's going to be a little different than what you're used to here in Lackland.
So when you said you didn't do well on the sit-ups, like were they just like do as many sit-ups as you can? And
yeah, so typically for an Army, Air Force, Marine test, you have to do like as many push-ups as you can in X amount of minutes. So they had to do an Army test, and it was actually really wasn't that difficult. Was kind of like a lazy pothead before I joined. So it was like 50 sit-ups in 2 minutes, which really isn't that hard, but I got to 50. When I got shipped to Florida on the first day, you have to take this test, and it's like you have to do 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, 2 minutes of pull-ups, a 2-mile run, and then you do like a ruck march with like weight on your back. So I passed everything except the sit-up test. So I failed by a couple. So what happened was I had a choice. I failed, so I couldn't go on with training, and I hadn't even started it, so that was pretty embarrassing. It was kind of tough because I'm like an 18-year-old kid, and I'm away from home, and I failed. So they gave me a choice, Sergeant Ramos, and he was like, you can leave, go somewhere else in your regular Air Force job, or we will put you in remedial training with Sergeant Lombardo, and he will train you for the next 2 months. You have to wake up at 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., and you're basically his bitch for 4 hours.
Did you go with that option?
I did, and
oh, wow.
That dude was the scariest dude I've ever met in my life. But he taught me a lot of really good life lessons, smoked the shit out of me for 4 hours a day.
For 2 months, you woke up at 4 a.m., and you just busted your ass till 8 a.m.?
Yes. I mean, then I had to go and do I had to do like detail after that all day.
Damn.
But it was definitely, he taught me a lot of really good life lessons, and he pulled like probably the best out of me. Like I realized how strong you can be if you put your mind to something. So that was
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you finished the 2-month training, and then what happened after that?
Then I went back into the regular training to become a TAC P. We call ourselves ROMADs. And so went through that training, and that was, like I said, 7 or 8 months of just like you do field training, weapons training, like you learn how to do aerospace deconfliction. You just learn about different weapon systems. Past that, then I went to Western Washington after that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, they're flying you all around the country. And you're busting your ass doing this, but you probably got to see some cool stuff while you were doing all that.
Yeah, I kind of saw some pretty interesting things in Florida. It was kind of like it was in Destin area at Herbert Field, and they call it Lower Alabama. There's a lot of rednecks and meth and all that kind of crazy stuff down there.
Yeah.
But then I got shipped up to Western Washington. I can't remember, the Fairchild Air Force Base maybe. Did survival school. That was only like a month long, but that was pretty fun. Then got shipped to Fort Benning. That was my duty station, so I was where my unit was. And then went to airborne school there. And I got there in July. And then I got trained up there, how everything works there, got trained up on the weapons, our radio systems, dealt with the Army. So I'm like a small Air Force unit, probably about 20 guys supporting a brigade of Army, brigade's about 5,000 people. And then you get broken down into different battalions, and then you go support different battalions, which there's like 4 or 5 battalions in a brigade.
Did you have any intention of flying at all, joining the Air Force?
No, so to fly, there's a couple routes. You have to go to the academy, which I never would have gotten into. My grades weren't good enough in high school. Or you can go to college. I didn't have the grades to go to college. That was kind of my limiting factor too. I didn't even apply to college, honestly.
Yeah.
When I graduated.
And what's interesting about that is you had really good grades in chiropractic school.
School just bored me.
You did awesome. Yeah. And I think you just set your mind to that, and you did really well. So, I mean, that just goes to show you can learn anything if your head's in the right spot.
I completely agree with that statement.
Okay, so you're up in Western Washington, and you're part of this Air Force. What was it called again?
So I was at the survival school in Washington, then I got flown to Fort Benning in Georgia, and then I got to my unit there, went to airborne school, and that was with the 15th ASOS Detachment 1. So ASOS is Air Support Operations Squadron, Detachment 1. I was with the Tactical Air Control Party, which just everyone calls the TAC-P. So I was there, like I said, for a few months, got hazed and all that good stuff, kind of got put back into reality that you're a piece of shit.
At any point were you like, I need to get like the fuck out of here, or were you loving it, or did you like?
I loved it. I'd never really been challenged mentally and physically up like that to that point, because I went to work every day and it's just like I had to be on my A game. You know, I have to know they're going to be quizzing me. If I don't get quizzed, they're just going to bring me back and just smoke the shit out of me for an hour. So it like really it's like, so you're either going to be a dirtbag and not really do much and just scurve by, or you're going to go and elevate your game a little bit, make sure that you know your shit and that you're physically fit too. So,
all right, what's next there, Mike?
So gotten trained up, got the call in 2007 when my favorite president, George Bush, called in the surge. That was in January. They called the surge over the next like 6 months or year. They're going to increase the troop levels in Iraq. So immediately my unit got shipped to the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, which is in California, actually my first trip to California, and did some pre-deployment training. That's 6 weeks long in the desert out near Barstow. So after that was my first experience with Los Angeles. Actually, we were done with training. We were like, oh, let's go down to Los Angeles, spend a couple days there. And I was like, I hate this place. I'm never moving here.
I know you hate it.
So got done with that, went back to Georgia, and I got 2 weeks off before I was headed to Iraq. When got ready to go, did all my training that I needed to do, saw my family one last time, and then got on a plane and flew directly to Qatar, Al Udeid Air Force Base.
How long's that flight from Georgia to...
Oh, man. So actually, we flew from Atlanta to Baltimore, and then Baltimore, we went to England, Italy, or Germany, Italy, and then Qatar. And I honestly don't know. It was probably, it had to have been like 15 hours without the stops.
And how are you feeling? Like you're heading over to Iraq. Like, what's going through your mind there?
Honestly, I'm 19 at the time. I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
But luckily, I was going with some really experienced guys, some guys that had been with supporting some Ranger units, some Special Forces units. So they kind of put my mind at ease. I was the only guy who was new. No, there was another guy. There's two of us that were brand new on our first deployments, but everyone else was really supportive. And they were just, honestly, I don't remember thinking about it or being that nervous going over.
Yeah. You touch down in Iraq. Do they start you up right away, or?
No. So honestly, it's like one big bureaucratic clusterfuck. So I go to Qatar and I in process there, let them know that I'm there, get our weapons issued to us, kind of get our orders, what we're doing next. So I spent like a week in Qatar. And if you want to know what the surface of the sun feels like, go to Qatar. It is white. I didn't bring sunglasses. I stepped off, we got in there in the morning, went to bed. I woke up and I couldn't see. It was so fucking bright. It was like looking into one of those fluorescent lights. It was so freaking bright.
Damn.
But that place is kind of a joke because it's an Air Force base. There's girls in bikinis. There is beer served.
What?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But it's like you're not in harm's way. You're in a new country. It's actually a beautiful country. I came to find out later. I went to Doha. And it's absolutely gorgeous.
This is Iraq?
No, this is Qatar, which is
Qatar.
It's a small, it looks like Michigan, actually. It's just in the Persian Gulf, and it's right across from Iran on the other side, on the side of the Arabian Peninsula with Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Yemen.
Were you looking at maps before you went over there, or when you got over there, you really started to know the area and where you were?
Yeah, so I had no idea what Qatar was. I'd never heard of that. So before I went, I knew I was going there just for a couple of days. So I started looking at the map, and I was just trying to, I love maps now. So I'm looking at the maps, checking out where I'm going, looking at the city and everything. But like I said, I couldn't really explore too much that first time going to Qatar. But then then we flew into Baghdad, so we went to flew to Kuwait for a day. And then to Iraq, we landed in Baghdad, which is the place where all the big generals are, where all CNN is. It's massive. It's it's where all the generals are. It's where all the big brass is. So then you do in-processing there. Yeah, sorry, this is a really long process.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
So you get there, you in-process. It's actually Saddam's palace. So one last fuck you to Saddam Hussein. We set up our communications in our main base in Saddam's old palace. So he's got my career field, the TACPs. They had a house. It was called the TACP house. And it was supposedly Saddam's guest house. And this fucking guest house looked like, have you ever been to Newport, Rhode Island?
Yes, I have.
So it was probably twice the size of one of those beautiful mansions.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, those things are huge.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. And granted, when the U.S. got there, they destroyed everything. Everything was handpicked, all the gold. So it was like, it wasn't as nice as it probably was, but it was still pretty freaking nice. So we were there for a few days, made sure we got all our equipment ready, gear checked everything. And I was going to be shipped off with a couple guys down about southeast of Baghdad, about 30 miles to outside of a town called Salman Pak, which I didn't think was significant, but it was actually an old capital of one of the old remnants of the Persian Empire or the Archimedean Empire way a couple thousand years ago. And they had this really cool building. I can't remember what it's called. Just look up Salman Pak if you get an opportunity. It's Salman space Pak. It's a rinky-dink little town, primarily farming. But the reason why we were sent there is because there was a main supply route that kind of went all the way from Kuwait all the way up to Baghdad. And so we were monitoring, just like there was a lot of weapons flow into Baghdad. So we were trying to intercept that. So that was just hanging out in that little town, going back and forth between that and we had another unit that was up in a place called Fob Hammer, which I would go to. And I would eventually be up there for most of my time later in my deployment. But it was just a larger base where we trained the Iraqi National Police and the Army. I didn't personally do any of the training, but it was like a combined base. So it was a lot larger than the patrol bases that I was in at the beginning of my deployment.
So overall, how was your experience, your whole deployment over there?
It was definitely a very eye-opening experience. Well, the good thing about going to overseas now is that you have the public support nowadays. You don't come back and someone spits in your face like those Vietnam vets, which is good. But it was like you go to a third world country. I had heard about Iraq from my 7th grade teacher. She would go like raise her right hand and go, the Tigris, then raise her left hand and go, the Euphrates. Then she goes, land between two rivers, the Mesopotamia. And I always thought she was a fucking idiot, but...
That's funny that you remember that, though.
Yeah, I remember that. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm in Mesopotamia now.
Wow.
And honestly, if you can get past where you are and why you're there, it actually has some beautiful farmland.
Yeah.
And the local people are nice. They're dirt poor. They're picking through garbage. I mean, they've been at war essentially or sustaining American bombardment since the early 90s. And now we're in their land again. So I had a little bit of empathy going through and seeing an eye-opening experience basically from the perspective of I'm coming from a white, blue-collar, middle-class family in New England. Now I'm going and I'm in a third world country where people don't even have television. They have radio. I mean, there's a ton of people. They're living in like mud huts. Not everyone has cars. They're walking. Like women are walking around in burqas, can't show their face. And you just learn. I mean, honestly, I couldn't speak any Arabic, but you definitely get some different perspective. For instance, like, so in the Army, you have a rank structure and it doesn't matter how old I am. If I'm someone who outranks me, then like if I'm older, say I'm 45 years old and there's a lieutenant, but I'm a sergeant, that lieutenant supersedes me. So I have to listen to everything he says. Well, Iraqis don't give a shit. And I know it's the same thing in Afghanistan as well, although I didn't go there. So like if they're going to communicate, they want to communicate with the leader and they don't look at rank. They look at who's the oldest because they look at that as a sign of they're the eldest, they're probably the wisest. So like you'll have these second lieutenants or butter bars and they're in charge, but the Iraqi elders or the tribal leaders, they don't want to listen to they want to communicate with the oldest gentleman there. And that's always going to be the crusty old platoon leader or the platoon sergeant. So that was cool.
So do you guys let that happen?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, the say is on the ground commander. At the platoon level, that's usually like a second lieutenant, which is a really young guy. But if you're out there on a battalion mission, the ground commander is there, he's typically the older guy. He's going to be he's a full, like a lieutenant colonel. So he's a little bit older. So he's typically going to be one of the older guys. So they will listen to him. Granted, we're doing this all via translator, but even with a translator, you're directing your communications at whoever you're talking to, even though there's a person standing there. So realizing that, since I was part of when we first went in there to Iraq, it was like really aggressive. We needed to knock off this insurgency. So there's a lot of bombing campaigns and really a lot of rounding people up and putting them into detention centers. But as the deployment went on, it was more of, hey, we need to build these people's infrastructure. We need to build their roads, help rebuild their bridges. Yeah. So at that point, it was a little bit safer. And so the ground commander was like the actual like battalion commander would go out on those missions. And it was more of like going out. And it was more like propaganda. So you would have like you'd have like a huge security detail out there. So it was really safe. And so like the ground commander would walk out there with no body armor and he would get you would have like CNN or one of the TV networks out there saying how safe it was, but no one realized that we had drones overhead, we had an F-16 overhead, and it was like everything was being monitored. But going, not to get too far off topic, towards the end of the deployment, it was direct communication with the older tribal leaders and the older battalion brigade commanders.
Did you have any like really scary moments over there?
There were a couple. Luckily, I didn't get like, this wasn't the Battle of Fallujah for me, so I didn't get like into really heavy fire. There were a couple times I was in a position where my direct job wasn't to go in and go into a stack and go into a house, but we had to stay back with the ground commander, which could be, like I said, a first lieutenant or a battalion commander, and we were providing the air support. So when we did go like a block off a compound and go in, we were standing back talking to the aircraft overhead. So if anything did happen, we'd pull the guys out and then we'd go in and do a bomb or drop a bomb or just at least a show of force. So there were a couple times when it got a little scary. Just when there was a little bit of a gunfight, I didn't have to fire my weapon, which was nice. But when you start hearing gunfire and it gets a little scary, there was a couple times I was on top of a building my first time and there was an RPG that did hit the building. That was pretty scary.
That you were on top of?
Yes.
Damn.
And it was an ex-military, an old Iraqi Republican Guard building. So it was a pretty sturdy building, but that was pretty scary. There was a couple times, actually before I even got into that, where we'd go out on these convoys and just like route clearance or going out with as a detail to bring supplies to different patrol bases or combat outposts or forward observation bases. And so there were times where like sophistication of the IEDs, we were kind of coming back and we were figuring out how to detect them ahead of time. So there were a couple times where last second we did get there and so we had to detonate them. So that was kind of like a eye-opening experience. Like, oh shit, like I'm here less than 30 days and then we go like 10 feet off the base and then all of a sudden we're stopped. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And everyone's getting impatient and then we detonate an IED and it's like, boom. And so that was pretty, kind of kept me in check. So after doing, but like I said, I wasn't in anything like anything super serious. So I was fortunate enough for that.
Right. Well, even probably just driving through the streets, seeing the people, seeing the way they live, seeing all the shit going on over, that's enough alone right there to just take a couple steps back and be like, whoa, this is completely different than what I've been experiencing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. And it comes back and it's a tough, when you come back and you start driving, you end up going to the same thing. Like, hey, you're scanning the road for IEDs and trash because people, they put...
when you're coming back to the States?
Yeah. So when I get back to the States, I'm like...
Yeah. So talk about that. When you got back, how was that, the transition back from being in Iraq to being back in the United States?
It's honestly, I didn't think it would be tough, but it really is a tough transition. So I'm not going to compare myself to the Vietnam vets because I didn't live in the mud. And so I'll preface that by saying like, when we did go overseas, we didn't have showers or hot water or anything, or even we were eating those MREs for the first couple months and not really taking any showers. But as the deployment went on and I moved to like a bit larger base later in my deployment, it was actually got really nice. And so like I got hot shower and I got 3 hot meals a day. And so that was nice. So it was a little bit of a slow transition.
Right. And that's something people don't even think about though. Like not everybody, but most people in the US are taking hot showers every day.
Yeah.
They're eating 5 or 6 hot meals a day, let alone 3. And it's just, you take it for granted.
You do. And so that was definitely, so when I started getting those hot meals and they end up, it's ridiculous in Iraq, or it was, obviously it's not the same now, but they ended up like, as I was leaving, they were putting coffee shops and they even had Burger Kings on some bases over there. It was fucking insane. So like some people who were at larger bases in Iraq, like it wasn't even like they were over there. Yeah. Over there, they had like a humongous gym and they had like a Burger King and all these like hot women. I didn't see a good looking woman for the first, at least for the first 4 or 5 months of my deployment.
Wow.
But anyway, as my transition back from overseas, obviously I had a really great support system. Again, with the guys I was overseas with, they had done it 3 or 4 times and a lot different deployments than what I had been on. Like they had been, like I said, with special forces units or ranger units, or I'd been in the thick of stuff during the initial invasion. So I don't want to take anything away from them because there were some guys I met did some really great things prior to when I got there. I don't feel like I did anything that great. when I compare myself to them, but I've definitely served among some really honorable guys, and they're still doing it. They're still out there. Well, I have a couple guys that are with the SF units that are supporting the Rangers, and they're gone over every 4 months, and they're training their asses off, and they give up a lot for this country. Whether or not you believe what we're doing is right, they're still fighting for, I'm not going to say for our freedoms, but they're fighting for America, and they're fighting for this country, and I have nothing but love for them. Anyhow, getting back to the question, getting back, and I don't know, it was really tough, honestly, because you go back and everyone kind of pats you on the back, your family, and they're happy to see you. But then like I go back to my day, you're kind of in a bubble when you're in the military because everyone's been there and everyone's done that. So no one says anything about it, but you end up seeing a lot of alcoholism and drug abuse. And unfortunately, I had been through that, honestly, early in my life. I'd been like an underage dealing with smoked a lot of weed, did a lot of hallucinogenics, and I drank a lot. So I was like, I don't want to get back into that. So this is when I had actually gotten into really good shape in Iraq, gotten huge into CrossFit back when it was starting to get big in the military. And so I used that frustration and anger that you get when you're overseas and you kind of have this eye-opening experience of kind of corruption in the bureaucratic side of American foreign policy. And I personally was really angry. I still angry when it comes down to it, but I've learned to channel that towards, I started doing getting really big into CrossFit, doing that. And this is when I started to pick up and run a lot. And at this time, actually, gas, contrary to popular belief of what people tend to think about the past, gas at this point was $4 under George Bush. And I drove a Jeep that was lifted. So I got about 12 miles to the gallon if I was lucky. So I was like, I can't afford this. I drive 30 miles to work and I drive 30 miles home. So I am going to buy a bicycle.
Yes. Yeah, because when I met you at chiropractic school, you didn't have a car or anything. You were always riding your bike.
Yeah, I ended up getting rid of my car when I got out. But yeah, so this is when I started riding. Nothing big, just recreational driving to and from work or riding my bike to and from work. And then
30 miles?
Yeah, 30 miles there and then 30 miles home.
You were riding. You were driving your bicycle.
Yes, and then
wow.
I got into fantastic shape. My saying is, I had a buddy who sent me this years ago, but it was like, bicycles run on fat and save you money, and cars run on money and make you fat.
Yeah. So where are you at this point?
I'm still at Fort Benning. So I think I did 13 months in Iraq.
Wow.
And actually, going back, I did my mid-tour leave in my 10th month. And it was actually during the 2007 Patriots undefeated season. And so I actually bought tickets to the AFC Championship game that year in Foxborough. I hadn't spent any money in 10 months, so I had a lot of money. So it was $1,500 a pop for the tickets.
Wow.
So I brought my dad there. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm 3 years in. I still have a lot to learn. And I actually come to find out there was another, I guess, glitch in my path. So I was going to go and I was going to plan on, at this point, I was getting into shape. I was in phenomenal shape. I was doing really well. I was kind of getting set up to be from the golden boy of my unit.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to go to Ranger School at this point. So the Ranger School is a leadership school in the Army. And so it's primarily Army. There is actually more recently 2 females made it through. And that's a huge deal because females have never been allowed to go and never made it through.
Wow.
But typically it's like a 90% fail rate. So what I mean by that is you don't necessarily fail out completely, but you fail one section and then you have to wash back and start again. But a lot of people end up making it through. It's just like they stress you, you don't eat a lot, you sleep a lot. And so I got the opportunity to go to the Ranger School. However, I failed my my land navigation. So I failed out. I would have washed back. However, I was pulled by my unit. Somehow, somewhere, someone said I quit and I failed on purpose. So I kind of got blacklisted for a little while.
Why did you fail on purpose? Because you didn't want to do it?
No, I didn't fail. I just failed my nav. Someone out there, I don't know who got this idea in their head, but the idea was that I failed on purpose, which I did not. I don't quit. I'm not a fucking quitter.
Wait, that's so strange.
It was.
How they could even say you failed on purpose.
Well, I went with a buddy who did fail on purpose.
Yeah.
And he was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. It probably looked bad from an outsider's view. Like we both went in there together.
Gotcha.
He failed on purpose. I just failed because I fucking apparently suck. I thought I was good at land navs, but apparently I'm not good at all. So I got blacklisted. Like I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. And really, I was kind of treated like shit not by my close constituents, but from a larger scale. And so it kind of turned me off to my job, honestly. So at this point, I was like, fuck this. I'm going to go and I want to be a rescue diver. So I was like, I'm going to go be a rescue diver. I'm going to try to cross train into this. So this was about 6 months after the fact. I had just kind of got into a rut, and I don't like to stand still for any single period of time. And I had a couple years left in my enlistment. So it was like at a transition. I was at a point where I needed to make a choice. Am I going to stay in this job, but am I going to progress and I need to do something. So I was like, I'm going to go and be a rescue diver. So I dropped a package for that. And my commander, who was the one who kind of blacklisted me, he's like, he did not approve it. So I got kind of stuck in my job, which I continued to do the job. I continued up with training. I went on different training trips to Las Vegas for for like 3 or 4 months, which was another fun time.
That's funny you say that too, because I remember me and Kevin Fisher were going to Vegas one weekend in chiropractic school, and you're like, I'm never going back to that place.
Yes. Honestly, it's a great place. I did a lot of triathlon training on later on down the line, and I did some good exploring when I was there, but my first couple weekends there you know how it goes when you go to Vegas.
Dude, that place is good for 1 day, maybe 2.
Yeah.
And it's just all downhill after that.
Yeah, so went there. That was fun. Learned a lot there, but went up to, right after I got back from Vegas, I went up to a unit in Portland and I tried out for them to go to be a rescue diver, which is in the Air Force. It's called a pararescueman. So I went there and that was like a swim, a run, push-ups, sit-ups, and then they drown you basically for a little while.
They drown you?
Yeah, because you need to be good at holding your breath for their training.
So is there someone like physically pushing you down?
Yes.
Damn.
So I did really well with the interview and that process. And so they were like, yeah, we would love to have you on. You just need to drop your packet. So dropped my packet. Like I said, it got denied. And then at this point, it was a transition. Commanders changed. So I went to that new commander and I was like, hey, I want to do this. I'll do what you guys need me to do, which is they needed me to make a new deployment. And then when I got back, he was like, hey, you can go and deploy. You can go and cross train into this new job.
Deployment where?
I went back to Iraq for a second time.
You did 2 tours over there?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So you came back and then, so they said they'll let you do the rescue dive.
Yes. Now, this is when...
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. They're like, oh, just go do another tour. And like, what?
Yeah. That's what I signed up for. I had to do my duty. Like I had to fill the number. They were short. My job in the Air Force was only about 40% manned. So you have to do a lot of deployments. You have to do a lot of shit that you particularly want to do. But it's funny because it's called Tactical Air Control Party, and those guys can freaking party. I'll tell you what, because I did a lot of training trips I went to a lot of different towns in the South. I went to places like Camden, Alabama, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is funny because that's where Paul is from. And I guarantee you, her and I we met before we went to chiropractic school. It was just, we'd hang out at the same, because talking with her, we'd hang out at the same place. And we'd all in this place called Ropers.
Wow.
But we all got hammered when we were there. So anyway, you see a lot of how backwards actually even in this country is. You go to these small, really segregated towns in the deep South. So I went to this place, Camden, Alabama, which is on the line of Mississippi and Alabama. And I know I'm getting way off track here, but I go into this town with a buddy of mine, and we're both Yankees. I'm from Rhode Island. He's from Massachusetts. And we go into this little place. It's just, they have fried chicken and that kind of stuff. And it's all blacks. And they go in and we sit down and seat yourself. And the lady comes up to her. She's like, what are you boss doing in here? And I'm just like, I just want to get some food. And she's like, are you sure you want to be here? And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I want to be here? And she's like, well, your folk don't usually come in here. That was I was like, oh shit, this shit's still going on in this country, this segregation. Wow. And so we ended up talking with them. It was really friendly. And, honestly, I've learned, yes, there's a lot of hate and anger out there and prejudice, but I found that for the most part, people are pretty good. And if you get to know them and you show empathy and you show them that you're respectful, they're going to do the same back.
I agree, yeah.
As that was a side note, going back, I went on my second tour in Iraq. And that second tour, I was down outside of Karbala, which is a holy site for Sunni Muslim, which is the minority in Iraq, the predominantly Shiite there. So Shiites are majority in Iraq and Iran. Everywhere else, Sunnis are the majority. So that was a holy city for the Shiites. And so we were from a distance. So this is when Obama was in power now. So the focus was stand back and just provide surveillance. And so I didn't do anything that second tour.
Yeah.
Significant. did, however, hurt my hand in a weightlifting accident. And this is significant because I hurt my hand and I didn't think anything of it. Well, actually, I did think a lot of it because it was fucking killing me. But I went to the medic there and they said, oh, you're fine. Just ice it and wrap it. So this went on for about 4 months, going to the medic at least once a week saying, my hand is killing me. Can someone take an x-ray or something? And so no one really believed me that anything was going on, but I couldn't do anything. I continued to lift weights, but, and I continued doing my job, which really wasn't a whole lot at this time. But come to find out, after I went to a new patrol base or a new forward observing base, Fob Echo, which was up along the Tigris. Come to find out, I finally went in. I actually banged my head and had to get stitches on the corner of a building. And so when I went in there was a PA there and they had just gotten an x-ray there. So I'm like, my hand is killing me. Can someone please just take a look at this?
Yeah.
So we took a look at it. He's like, why don't we take an x-ray? We just got it in. So we took an x-ray of it. This is 5.5 months after I initially hurt my hand.
Damn.
I took the x-ray and I had a avascular necrosis of my scaphoid on my left hand.
Wow.
So the PA was like, dude, you need to get surgery on this like immediately because that bone is dead. So talked to my supervisor and my commander. And within 2 weeks, I got shipped back to Georgia where I was set up. And within the month of getting that, this was in August of 2010. By August 21st, I had gotten my surgery on my hand. So that was another trajectory. I was not going to go be a rescue diver anymore.
Yeah.
So at this point, I was like, I started applying to schools and I got accepted to University of Auburn, got accepted to University of Rhode Island, University of Arizona, University of California, San Diego, and University of Utah, in Boise State, actually. So I loved Salt Lake City from past training trips, did a lot of training out in the salt flats. So I decided Salt Lake City was for me. I loved it. Every time I had gone there, it was such a great place. It was really such a beautiful view. The trails were great. And I was like, I could live here. Definitely live here. So
and that's where you met your good friend, Brandon over there.
Yeah, I did meet him up there.
What a guy. Love that kid.
Yeah, me too, man. Actually, I'm going to see him this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that.
Great. So what did you want to do in Utah?
Well, I decided I was going to go to PA school, but I had to do I had to go, at this point I had gotten associates from the Community College of the Air Force. I did it like online schooling and some classes through the Community College of the Air Force while I was in. So I got my associate's degree in like information systems, whatever the fuck that means. But got out in May of 2011. But I actually was going to separate in August. So I had 2 months of saved up leave where I could just kind of go out and do my own thing. So at this point, I went home to Rhode Island, spent some time with my family, did some traveling around New England, going, seeing some friends. And then I packed all my stuff up in a U-Haul on August 1st, 2011, and moved out to Salt Lake City. Didn't know anyone, like I said, no points of contact, didn't really have a plan other than I was starting the University of Utah on August 20th. Got out there, found a house relatively quick, but I stopped along the way. I stopped, did a little bit of a detour through the Midwest, kind of checked out some places.
Right.
Saw Middle America, how I do not like Nebraska. But yeah, got there, started up. It was funny, I was trying to get in touch with someone from the University of Utah triathlon team because over the previous summer I'd done half Ironman for the first time, and I wanted to get more into triathlons as like an outlet for my anger and my frustrations with the military and honestly my depression. And so I thought triathlon would be a good transition because I couldn't go back to weightlifting because of my hand, the screws that were still in my hand from that scaphoid surgery. And so I had been.
Do you still have the screws in?
Yeah, on my left hand.
Yeah.
And so if you can see the mobility from my right hand to my left. It's like that's the most extension I can get.
Yeah.
So I'd been emailing someone from about February from the University of Utah triathlon team, which come to find out was Brandon. And I was emailing them like once a month, like trying to find like someone, like, do I need to get a physical to join the team?
Right.
I didn't know how organized it was. So started school. It was really tough to make friends at University of Utah.
Why is that?
Well, so Utah, as you know, is primarily LDS, or everyone knows them as the Mormons. So they're pretty conservative. Tattoos aren't really allowed. So I went there. I wear my short shorts. I'm wearing my running gear around. I've got tattoos and I swear a lot and I can be loud if I want to.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm like 24, 25. I'll be honest. I'm a little rough around the edges if you don't know me. So luckily...
Well, you're a very real person, and that's what I love about you.
Well, thank you, sir.
It's take it or leave it. This is who I am, and that's what really drew me to you.
Well, thank you, sir.
I remember the first conversation I ever had with you because you were walking around school with the shorts and the tank top and didn't show up to class with shoes. So, like, I remember my first conversation with you. I was like, yo, what's up, Mike? Like, how come you're not wearing shoes? And you just look at me like, they're prisons for my feet. And I was like, I fucking love this guy. Yeah, dude, really appreciate that about you. But, yeah, go on.
So, I did say that at Prisons for My Feet. I was frustrated with the military. I was tired of being told what to do and wearing boots around. So I was like, fuck this. I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to tell me what to do anymore. So luckily I met a couple cool people. Initially, I met an Army veteran who had done some tours in Iraq. So him and I were good friends from the get-go. You're older than the general college population, which is 20 years old. I'm 25, which isn't old, but I've got a little bit more life experience. I swear a lot. I guess I can be intimidated with my tattoos. I don't particularly found myself intimidating, but most people I come to be friendly with were older, more seasoned people, but I still was having tough transitioning to the civilian life. You go from the work ethic of rank structure and everyone does what they're told to do and everyone's pretty motivated that I was associated with in the military. And you go to just incompetent assholes. People will have to be handheld. People are just entitled on the outside world. They just I don't even know I'm still frustrated with it, honestly. People just think they know it all. And most of the time I keep my mouth shut. Some people need to be put in check. You do not know everything. You're from a southern, now that I'm in Southern California, you're a Southern California bubble. You've had a lot of money. Yeah. You don't have a lot of life experience. Even if we're the same age, we're both 30. I'm not saying I'm better than you, but you need to get out more and experience life outside of this Southern California bubble. But anyway, going back to Utah, I got involved with the triathlon community. Finally, Brandon answered my emails 6 months later.
God damn it, Brandon.
Yeah, I know. My first experience with him is we meet at a coffee shop with a bunch of people. And so I met with a triathlon group and Brandon is just oblivious. He's got a good handshake. So he shakes my hand really well. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this guy. But then he's just on his freaking phone. He will not look up. I'm like, dude.
Yeah, you must have been furious.
I was pretty pissed. I'm like, would you just look up from I'm like, I'm Michael. That's the guy you've been trying to get in touch with, or I've been trying to get in touch with you. And he's like, oh, I've been trying to get in touch with you. And, Brandon's he's a little timid.
Yeah.
So he didn't really know how to handle me at first. Yeah, I was kind of an asshole to Brandon at some points, definitely. But we hit it off really well. Him and I did a lot of our triathlon training together. He's a really good swimmer. I'm the better of the two at running. And we're a little bit short distance. Him and I are pretty even, but since I'm a little bit lighter, I'm a lot lighter. I'm a really good distance triathlete. Yeah. So we got trained together. He kind of got me in with his buddy Wesley was definitely a really good mentor for me on the outside world. I kind of helped work with him a little bit as an assistant coach for his triathlon coaching company. But he kind of did a lot for me. He gave me a job. He helped me out when I needed because I didn't have my car in Utah. I sold my Jeep. I just had my bicycle. So I took public transportation, but it was good to have someone. He really believed in me as an athlete and he wanted me to do well in triathlon. So he really pushed me. He kind of gave me a job to help coach and he's a stand-up guy. And he gave me the shirt off his back and I feel indebted to him. So hopefully I can repay him here in the future when I get on my feet again. He's actually the assistant coach for the Paralympic triathlon team. So I'm hoping to work with him in that capacity. But
great.
So he was my coach, honestly. Wes was my coach. Wesley was Brandon and I's coach through triathlon. He helped me train for Ironmans. My first Ironman triathlon, which I didn't do very hot in, but it was a tough one. But he helped me train continue on. In that first season in the summer of 2012, I qualified for the Half Ironman World Championships. I came at Lake Stevens Triathlon Ironman, which is a half Ironman. I came in 15th overall, including professionals.
For those, I don't even know, for those that are listening too, what consists of a half Ironman?
Half Ironman is a 1.2 mile swim, a 56 mile bike, and a half marathon, so 13.1 miles.
Damn, that's intense.
So I did that, and I had a 5-minute penalty actually for drafting, which I still say is bullshit. But I finished in 4:29. So I would have finished in 4:24 without the penalty. So I did pretty good. And so my triathlon career was looking pretty positive. I had some goals to go and do. I wanted to qualify for Kona, which is the full Ironman championship in Hawaii. So, actually I didn't even race in the half Ironman championships. I didn't have the money because when you get into the outside world as a veteran, and any veteran is going to listen to this, I'm sure they can attest to this. People love the fact that you're a veteran, but they don't really give a shit about you.
Yeah.
They're like, thank you for your service, but you don't have any retail experience, or you don't have any food service experience. And I'm like, I have managerial experience. I have combat experience. I have communication experience. I have a long list. And like, I just want a job, man.
Yeah.
So I could not find a job. So I couldn't sustain my training that I was doing for the next year to continue on and do a triathlon training that I wanted to. So I continued to train with triathlon, but Wesley gave me a job. I had income through the GI Bill. They were paying for my school and a stipend, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I was living pretty lean. I had to move in with some friends. We were living in this house with no heat.
In Utah?
In Utah. I lived pretty lean. I was living off of rice and beans, essentially. I was waking up at like 4 a.m. to go coach, and then I was going to class, and I had these odd jobs, just shoveling snow for people. But I still couldn't get a job. I applied to a running store. Now, you'd think I'm a pretty decent runner at this point. I'm a veteran. I don't know. I was friendly with some of the people at this running store, but I still didn't get the job.
Really?
So that was pretty frustrating. I applied to California Pizza Kitchen. I applied to Whole Foods. I applied to Vaughn, all these different places that no one would hire me. And I was just so aggravated. And just like, at this point, I finally was like, I need to do something. So if I want to go PA or nursing, I need to get a job in healthcare. So I went and got a nursing assistant certification. Then I took the test, and I ended up getting a job a couple months later at the University of Utah. And this time, I'm still training for triathlon. I'm still running a lot. I'm biking everywhere in 10-degree weather. Definitely learned how important to have a beard is in cold weather. I gave an appreciation for people who take public transportation everywhere, or people who don't have cars, because I probably didn't thaw out until about May that year. But at that point, I got a job with the nursing, and I freaking, wiping asses and changing catheters and cleaning out colostomy bags really wasn't my idea of a job for the rest of my life. So all through this venture, I had met a guy named Tom Fletcher. He was another good mentor of mine, and he was a chiropractor. So now we're finally getting into the story. I know I'm rambling on here. He was a great laid-back guy, kind of like a California surfer, pothead, but he was the furthest thing from a pothead or a California surfer. He was a really good athlete, but he's like, Mike, I think he knew that I was having a little bit of a tough time. I had gone through a little bit of a breakup with the girl I was dating, who I really liked, and just kind of so I was still dealing with, I would find out, I guess I got diagnosed with PTSD later on, depression, kind of like lost in my life. I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. I had some good friends, but I didn't have like any really good, like really close friend that I could come in and vent to. So like, I didn't want to seek out any help with the VA at this point, although I did volunteer at the VA. I did volunteer once a month just at the front desk, helping like the old Vietnam vets, just like kind of shooting the shit with them. It wasn't anything big. Like I didn't really have the time commitment to give more than that. On a side note, I did have, when one of my friends, Liz Miller Bennett, she saw I was going through a tough time and she knew I loved to do burpees. I was like, hey, why don't we do a burpee mile for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month? So this is in October of 2012, about a year before we started chiropractic school. And I had no idea I was going to be a chiropractor this time. Yeah. She was like, why don't we do a burpee mile and we'll raise money for a local charity. So I thought that was a great idea. My friend Wes and I got together and we brainstormed, and we kind of got all the logistics together to throw a burpee mile together. We got the Utah Jazz cheerleaders out there.
Nice.
Yeah, so we got all these giveaways, and we had about 200 people show up to do a burpee mile, and we raised about $2,500 for a local charity for people for sexually abused kids.
Wow.
So that was fun, and I was like, man, it felt really good to give back, especially fun to first of all, get people out who aren't used to exercising, going out and exercising as a team, and then raising money for a good cause, and then actually giving money to kids who needed it.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of like fast forward back to, I'm working in a hospital, kind of in a rough spot. Brandon has recently, our buddy Brandon, for those of you who don't know, is a good buddy of mine through chiropractic school. He applied to chiropractic school because of my buddy Tom. So Tom was like, hey, Mike, why don't you come down and see what I do? Because you want to get into healthcare. You had talked about PA and physical therapy. So just come on and see what I do. So I went down to his office. I worked with him for a couple weeks while actually Brandon was on a vacation. So I worked the front desk for him. So I saw what he did, his interaction with patients. He did a lot of soft tissue, a little bit of rehab. But I saw how like he had a change in a lot of people's lives that were injured.
Definitely.
People with like just sports injuries, just like general aches and pains. And he was able to get them back to life, back to sport, and back to daily activities, daily living pretty quick. Definitely. And I was like, wow, this is pretty powerful stuff, chiropractic. And so in April or so. I don't even know when I applied. Brandon, I was like, Brandon, fuck it, I'm going to apply with you and see what happens. So I got accepted down here at Southern California University of Health Sciences. They're going to pay for most of my schooling. So I was like, this is the change I need. I have to make a good change. And so in August of 2013, Brandon and I packed up our bags. I said goodbye to my good friends in Utah, and we moved down, went to chiropractic school.
Yeah. And I mean, nothing much to really talk about there. It was just pretty much a constant hell for 3 years. Every semester they tell you it's going to be done, and then it's...
Yeah.
Honestly, it didn't... There's 10 semesters. It didn't really stop until probably ninth term. Like the constant worry and stress and not getting past the next term. Jesus.
But then, you know, it even continues in 10th term because you take boards in 10th term, and you don't even find out if you pass boards until after you graduate.
Very true.
And so I tried at the first year of chiropractic school, I competed in triathlon and some racing, but it was pretty stressful and I was pretty burnt out because I was waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock, getting in a 50-mile bike ride, being in class all day, going home swimming. And I just at the end of the end of 5th term actually, so I'd been a year and a half of this, I was just going into 6th term, I knew that was going to be tough. And 7th term with clinic, I was like, all right, I need to really get my act together. I'm going to be burnt out. So I kind of gave up I just had to hang up my triathlon and I decided to just stick with running. So I decided I had to stay active. So that's when I really just did strictly running only.
That's cool, man. So so you're in the sports medicine program at school, right? So you get a lot of athletes and everything. So what do a lot of athletes come to you with?
So I took advantage of this sports medicine residency for a couple of reasons. A, my wife's from Southern California, and we would both like to leave, but we both need to save some money up. So I thought, buy myself instead of starting up a practice and getting stuck here, I'll take advantage of this opportunity. So I did that, but then on top of it, the learning aspect, I'm going to get my diplomate in sports medicine. But then C, I had to deal with law enforcement because we have a new tactical sports medicine branch of sports medicine here, which is great for me since I've got that military background. And my father was a police officer, so I understand what police go through. So I see a lot of, with the sport, with the tactical athletes, I see a lot of overuse injuries or deconditioned injuries. So what I mean by deconditioning injuries, so you have a deconditioned athlete, someone who's not in shape anymore, and they go pursue a suspect on foot and they go to cut or go after the guy, a non-contact ACL. I deal a lot with not just ACL tears, but meniscus injuries, low back disc herniations.
Right.
So I love soft tissue personally. I know it's not every chiropractor's thing, but I love it. And I do a lot of soft tissue and rehab with that particular cohort. So like I said, mainly low back, a little bit of neck and lower extremity like hip and knee. So I do a lot of rehab pre and post-op with those guys. But, even just working on just clearing up, loosening up some hip injuries, loosening up a lot of the soft tissue, giving them rehab exercises. And then, of course, the chiropractic adjustments is definitely going to be big.
Definitely. Yeah. And I remember, once a year in high school, I would pull my groin playing hockey. And I think my junior year, I finally found a sports medicine chiropractor. And I would be out for 3 or 4 weeks. And the season's not that long. So that'd be devastating. So I remember this guy, he did a lot of soft tissue work around my leg and my groin area, and I was back playing hockey in a week, and it saved my season. And sports medicine chiropractic works wonders, and chiropractic in general is a lifesaver, but what you do with a lot of the soft tissue work, it's definitely very necessary. And it doesn't have to be hockey. It could be any sport, running, anything, or even like you said, it doesn't even have to be sports. You can come in there with low back pain, and a lot of soft tissue work is very valuable.
Also, then I work with a more football, track and field. And so with the football players, I deal with concussions and how to deal with concussions, how to return them to play. And then I deal with they have a horrible strength and conditioning coach at the football program over here at one of the high schools. So I actually do a lot of rehab with them and kind of working on getting them back to play post injury. So I actually don't even do a lot of chiropractic on a lot of the football athletes, but I notice a lot of neck injuries in football players. So I actually am going to try to do a research over the next 2 years on the prevalence of disc pathology in football players. There is a lot of discogenic pain, and I'm learning that more because I do a lot of McKenzie end range loading stuff. And I realized that I found a really good way to deal with soft tissue wise, but mainly that chiropractic is really good for generalized upper back, neck injuries, and shoulder injuries. I've seen ACL tear. I've seen a cervical spine radiculopathy. I've seen many concussions, getting good at the rehab aspect for shin splints or plantar fasciosis. But In my 5 months being at a sports resident, I've seen relocated shoulders, but I've just seen so many injuries, and I've missed some things too. But the good thing is they go somewhere else. It's like, I'm going to get better at making sure I nail that diagnosis. That's my favorite part. I got that. My dad's a detective, so I got that in my blood. I want to find out what's going on. So my favorite thing about being a doctor of chiropractic is not only the treatment, I want to get you a good diagnosis.
Beautiful. And Mike, so where can people find you, get treatment?
If anyone's interested in emailing me, my email is michaelfanning@schuhs.edu. And then I have my Instagram page for Dr. Mike is @sports_spine_MF. And what I do there is I kind of just talk about some rehab stuff, and then that's pretty much it. I don't have a website up yet. That'll be a slow transition. So when I open my own practice in a couple of years. Yeah, if anyone has any sports related injuries or questions, I love doing research, and I'd love to point you in the right direction if I can't help you out.
Mike, thank you so much for coming on. That was one of my favorite episodes. I really appreciate you putting all the cards on the table, telling us your life experiences, and thank you so much.
Yeah, Kevin, I love you, buddy. I really appreciate you asking me to do this. No one's ever asked me to tell me my life story to them. And so I'd like to leave you with the interesting people ask questions. So you're a very interesting person. You want to know about other people. People who just talk about themselves, they just doing that because they want to be interesting, but they're probably not as interesting. So I know you have a lot of life experience yourself, and you've been through a lot, and I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the time to share my story with everyone.
Absolutely, Mike. It was a good one, and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. My private practice is located in New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. If you have any additional questions about today's podcast, other episodes, or any questions about Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic in general, feel free to visit my website at drkevinpecca.com or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca. Hope you enjoyed the show. Cheers.